Hey guys, it's Hillary. Welcome back to my channel, Enneagram Coaching. Today I am going to teach you guys on what it's like to work with a type 8. Alright, so whether you are an 8, you work for an 8, or you work with an 8, this video will help you. I have had so many great comments on this whole series. This is the second to last video in the series, so I've already covered types 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and today it's the 8's turn. The comments that I've gotten are, if you are the type I'm covering, you're learning to see how others see you in the world and how you come across sometimes. And also you guys are learning from these videos. So it's been a fun series. And then also I'm hearing from you guys if you work with a certain type or you work for a certain type that I've already covered. You guys are really starting to understand and feel understood. And this is helping you in the workplace. So it's been a great series and a lot of fun. But before I get started, don't forget to push the like button and subscribe. I thank you guys so much. It's because of you that I keep doing these, so I really appreciate you guys. And then also, if you guys notice the lighting kind of coming in and out, I don't know if it will or won't. I just kind of wanted to touch base on that because it is a cloudy day in Arizona. We don't get very many of those. I love them, but it can affect the lighting because I have a window right to the side of me. So, I don't know what the lighting will be because of that, but hopefully it'll be fine today. But let's get started with who are they? Who are the type 8s? Well, they are called the challenger, the boss, the protector. Those are some of the names that I've heard the type 8 called. They're the type that thinks big, acts decisively, and just makes things happen. They a lot of times will take on leadership roles. They don't have to all the time, but they will take the leadership role if needed. It's not a big deal to them. They usually are self-assured, confident, independent, tough. They think big picture. I'm actually going to probably say that a lot today because they really do. That really is a gift of theirs. They usually are the ones that are going to stand up for themselves and others, no big deal, no problem. They're going to go for the underdog. They're going to stand up for people. They're just, for justice and not afraid to fight for people. I would say the 8s struggle with being vulnerable. That's really hard for them. It's a good thing for them to work on, but it is hard for them to be vulnerable unless it's with people they trust. They definitely do not like being controlled. That's something that is really hard for an 8. I would say my husband is an 8. You will hear me refer to him a lot today because I did last night go over a lot of this with him and he was in tune, in with it. He really agreed with everything that I'm covering, and so I will quote him from time to time today, but I will say he does not like to be controlled. I always like to think of it like this is my husband. So say I think I've given this example before, but I think of him like this, just like this pen that won't bend. It's really hard for him to bend. It's really hard for somebody to go, okay, you need to go do this, or you need to do that, or whatever it is to be if it feels like control, it's hard for them to just be adaptable and bend and go with the flow like I can, right? And so that makes us different. But if you give them choices, it's a lot easier for them to bend. And so I know for my husband, he would just appreciate having a voice and having an opinion and being able to make a decision. And then he's able to bend much easier. But if you're type 8, let me know. Do you resonate with that or not? That's just my example for my husband. So I am wondering how many 8s can relate to that, or maybe you can't at all. But let me know in the comments below. I would say 8s are direct. They want others to be direct back. And the last thing I can think of when thinking about an 8 is they do not have a hard time making hard decisions. It's easy for them to make a hard decision and move forward. So that's just a little brief description of what an 8 is. And if you want more, I have tons of videos on type 8s. I've interviewed my husband a couple of times. I've interviewed, her name's Candy. She was a type 8. It was a great interview with her. And then also I've done other videos on type 8. So I will link a couple of those down below. Go find them if you want to know more about the type 8, because that was more of a, work environment and brief overview of the type 8. But let's move on to the strengths. What are the strengths of the type 8? So the first thing I want to say is a strength of an 8 is their ability to see the big picture, right? They can see all parts of a situation, figure out what needs to be done, and keep things moving in the right direction. So that is a definite strength of a type 8. So I did ask my husband, I went over this with my husband, and he said the only thing he would add to that is when others don't see the big picture as quickly And so that can be frustrating for a type 8. So that was his piece of wisdom there. So, all right, so the next strength of a type 8 is they live by their values of fairness, honesty, and fighting for the underdog. And when they use their powers in a healthy way, they get the job done. So that could be a strength of them. They also inspire others to speak out and act with courage. They're very inspiring to people. 8s will generously lead their own strength to others and help others grow in confidence by doing that. Another strength would be 8s don't doubt themselves. Honestly, their default mode is self-confidence. Even if they just appear confident always. Even if they're not, that is their default mode. And this will help them take on difficult tasks and achieve successful results. And so I would say that's definitely an area of strength for them. But all right, let's move on to areas of development. An area of development for a type 8 would be they say what they mean and mean what they say. They don't sugarcoat things, which is a strength. I would agree that, sometimes it would be nice to be able to do that as a type 9, but for them, the area of development is you don't always have to do that. There is an emotional intelligence that needs to be used, which means sometimes you need to pause and give yourself time to listen and hear what people are saying. Or a type 8 might just plow through because they say what they mean and they mean what they say and they don't sugarcoat it. And so they're just kind of going through, right? And actually I was talking to Bob last night, my husband, my type 8 husband, and he said that for him, what he's learned to do when the opportunity presents itself where he really needs to not just give his opinion and say what he needs to say right away. He says he buys time by asking questions. And so he might have the desire to go, I already know the answer or whatever it is. But he said what he's learned is to ask questions, to buy himself time so that he doesn't just speak out and quickly and maybe even snowplow somebody over. And it'll help him gain more knowledge and more information that he probably did need, but didn't know he needed. Does that make sense if you're a type 8? To just, I guess the area of development is to stop and pause and maybe ask questions so that it's not so quick to respond and okay, this is what I think and move on. Sometimes you need to stop, pause, reflect, ask questions, buy yourself some time in order to maybe get a little bit more information to move forward. So I think I just said the same thing twice. But let's move on to the next point. 8s can tend to disregard other people's opinions. As painful as it might be to an 8, ask what people think and listen. And this is straight from my husband. He said it is painful for him sometimes. And he said, as painful as it might be, it's more important to stop and to listen, because I think the painful part can be, it feels like they're wasting the 8's time. But if they stop and they listen, the input of others most often will lead you to an even better result. So that's just an area of development. Okay, so let's talk about that big picture thinking again. Like I said, this is a big one for the 8s because they're very big picture focused, but there is an area of development in the big picture thinking, because the strength actually could turn into a weakness. If an 8 is focusing so much on the big picture, they actually might miss little things that they needed to see. So that is something to take into consideration. So the next area of development that I want to cover is 8s might take charge when it's not their place because they think they can see a better way of doing it. And I would say just because you can see a better way doesn't mean you always have to step up and lead, because sometimes you're going to exert so much energy doing this and you're going to exhaust yourself. And so it's not always your place to step up and lead. It's actually more healthy for you not to always step up and lead and to take care of yourself sometimes and not feel like, well, I have to do it, otherwise it won't get done or it won't get done right. Don't believe that lie. Allow others to take charge and take the lead, because you can't do everything. You shouldn't do everything. So it's just not healthy for you as an 8 to always feel like you have to lead everything. So let's move on to, you might be working with a type 8 if. First one, they are not afraid to jump in and take the bull by the horns. Second one, they have a my way or the highway attitude. Oh my word. Last night when I was talking to Bob, my son jumped in and was like, So they do. They can have a my way or the highway attitude sometimes. The third one is they are always direct and they do not hide how they feel. That's really hard for them to hide anything. They're just, what you see is what you get with a type 8. Fourth one is they have no problem confronting people. Conflict is not an issue. Now, they don't want conflict. They're not seeking out conflict, but they don't have a problem dealing with conflict. If they have an issue or a problem with somebody, they have no problem confronting them and getting it taken care of, which is admirable as a type 9. I'm just going to put that out there. I sometimes wish I could do that much more easily than I can. And I would say you always know where you stand with a type 8. Like I said, they are what you see is what you get. So you always know where you stand with them. There's not a lot of like, oh, I wonder what they think of me. You usually know. They're just not gonna hide how they feel. And the last one I would say for the type 8 is a type 8 will always stand up for their team. Say that, you know, they're in charge or whatever, they're on a team. If someone starts to criticize their team, man, they are gonna totally have their team's back and stand up for them. And I mentioned this to Bob last night. He goes, heck yeah, to my own detriment sometimes. I will always have their back no matter what. And to me, I love that about the type 8. Okay, so let's move on to what's great about working with the type 8. They are high energy. They put a lot of effort into the things that they do. And a lot of times they're the last one to leave work or whatever they're doing. They just give it their all. They are not afraid of big challenges or lofty goals. They love a big challenge, and even if the odds are against them, nope, they love it. They will go after it. Another great thing is the type 8s, they lead with confidence and passion, and they are very inspiring to their coworkers and the people they work for, work with, and people around them. And the last thing I would say about what's great about working with a type 8 is a healthy 8 will balance courage and strength with a gentle and humble heart. I do love that about 8s. So let's move on to 8s say it's hard working with others because. First one is, they do not see the big picture as clearly as I do. That's so hard for an 8. I wonder how many times I've said the word big picture in this video. I didn't even know I'd be saying it that much, but it is something that is, you know, extremely relatable to a type 8. 8s might say it's hard working with others because people say that they're intimidating. And honestly, usually an 8 is not trying to be intimidating. They just come across that way, but that's not their goal. They're not trying to intimidate. They're just trying to get the job done. Another one I would say is people aren't always, they would say that people aren't always as competent as them. And so that might be hard for them to work with people that don't seem as competent as them. Okay, a big one for a type 8 is if people complain and whine about what's happening, but they don't try and solve the problem. 8s are like, okay, if you're gonna cry and whine about it, you gotta at least try and fix it too, right? And then another one I would say, and my husband 100% backed this up, when people try to micromanage them, they do not want to be micromanaged. They more than likely aren't going to micromanage either, but they definitely don't want to be micromanaged. And if that's part of what's going on, that's going to be hard for them to be on that team. And the last one I would say is if an 8 sees people in power mistreating people, that is going to be really hard for an 8 to be on that team. Luckily, the 8s are going to say something. They're not going to just let that happen, but they absolutely cannot stand if people are mistreated by people in power. So, okay, so let's move on to ways to communicate with a type 8. So a great way to communicate with them is an 8. They appreciate clear and direct language. So be to the point. They value honesty and directness, and that's what they're giving you, and that's what they would like to receive. So I would say don't give them a book when all they're asking for is bullet points. And so just be direct and clear and to the point for great communication. Obviously, that's not always going to happen, but I'm just saying good ways to communicate, that would be one. Another great way to communicate would be demonstrate loyalty to them by going the extra mile and backing them up. That is super important for a type 8. And the last one is ask clarifying questions to understand where they're coming from, where their heart is, what they're actually trying to say. Don't just assume. Ask some clarifying questions. Don't assume whatever it might be. All right, so let's move on to how to get along with a type 8. The first one in how to get along with a type 8 is do not gossip or betray their trust. It's already hard enough for them to give their trust away. And so I would just say that is a great way to lose their trust or to not get along would be to betray them. So do not do that at all. I mean, don't do that with any types, right? But for an 8, I'm just saying that's their core fear is that they would be betrayed. So that's a really important one to them. All right, so the next one is, and I would say, this is a huge one for my husband. Do not beat around the bush. If you're sending an email to an 8, don't send like this huge long email and then bury your actual question or want or whatever you wanted in the bottom of the email. That drives them crazy. I didn't even have to ask him to know that this drives him crazy because he does complain about this sometimes. He'll go, so-and-so emailed me. Oh my gosh, it was a crazy long email. And at the very bottom, I got to figure out what the email was about. So that is a definite way to not get along with them. Another way to get along with an 8 would be try to keep them informed especially if they're your boss or even your coworker, try to keep them informed. 8s want to know what's going on. They don't want to be caught off guard. So keep them informed. That's a good way of getting along with them. And then the last one, support them in taking action. You know, they love to take action, but support them in doing it. And also do not slow them down or interrupt them if you can help. That is hard for an 8, especially when they're going down the path. Unless they need to be slowed down. Sometimes that happens. But I'm just saying, when they're in the zone, they want to stay in the zone. So, all right, so let's move on to how to motivate a type 8. All right, so the first one is, I actually asked Bob about this, and because I actually was struggling here. I was like, how do you motivate a type 8? Because they seem so motivated already to me. Does this make sense? This is kind of where my line of thought was going. I was like, you guys are already motivated. You already are on the go, and like, my husband loves lists, loves to-dos, has agendas like all the time, and he's always motivated. So I'm like, all right, well, what if you're not motivated? How do you get motivated? And he said, the number one way to motivate him is words of encouragement. He said it's super important for him. So I'm assuming if you're an 8, let me know. But I think words of encouragement are important for an 8. Another thing would be give them a challenge, but let them figure it out and get it done. That will motivate them. A challenge will motivate them, but they want to be able to figure it out and get it done. And going back to the words of encouragement, I think these go hand in hand is if people are appreciating what they are doing, that does motivate them to do it. So in a nutshell, it doesn't take much to motivate a type 8. They usually have a to-do list longer than what you could have even given them. Because a type 8 actually is very agenda focused, that is highly developed usually in a type 8. So it doesn't take a lot to motivate them. Just remember, words of encouragement, appreciate them. They need that too, because you guys, they actually do have a very vulnerable side. They just don't let us in on it very much. So remember that when you're thinking about a type 8. But let's move on to the last one, which is growth practices for a type 8. And I will say, has it been cloudy? I think it has. I feel like it just got dark. Maybe it didn't, but I have felt it get light and dark today. So I'm apologizing that the lighting was probably a little distracting today, but there's nothing I can do about it. I guess I could have closed the curtains, but I appreciate natural light. Okay, I'm getting off track. Let's go back, start again. Growth practices for a type 8. First one is when you're communicating with other people, try if you can to say, because I think the 8 is always very direct and like knows, you know, what they want to say. But I think sometimes it's good to lead with, I could be wrong, but I could be mistaken. I think because 8s always come across as they know what they're talking about, and they a lot of times do. But I also think a good way to practice growth would be not to be so aggressive in what you're saying, and you could just soften it a little bit with, I could be mistaken, but da-da-da-da. Because in the end, I think it comes across as your opinion being the only one right, and that's not always the case. And so I think using some of that language sometimes can help a type 8. Another good one would be slow down and think about the cause and effect of acting on impulse. Because 8s, especially depending on their level of health, can just act on impulse and you know, snowplow through. I would say let things sink in. And my husband said, take a mental timeout. He goes, sometimes I just need to take a mental timeout and not be so impulsive. But that is a growth practice for you guys. I would say a good one for an 8 is to risk being vulnerable and sharing your tender side with the safe people. Not everybody, I'm not definitely saying that at all, but there are people you trust and safe people in your life. And it is healthy for an 8 to show that vulnerable side to them sometimes, because it builds healthy relationships where you can be yourself. And that is very important for an 8. You guys need to be able to be yourself. And the last one would be learn to recognize when you're all about taking action, because you're very action oriented, focused, right? You're in that aggressive stance, but the growth practice would be bring in your feeling and your thinking instincts too. Not always the move forward action instinct. All of us need all 3 instincts. And so I would just challenge you to think about it and to also feel it too, along with the action instinct. So does that make sense for the type 8 that, you know, I know you're very moving forward, getting things done, but also make sure you're thinking about it and then using your feeling instinct too. So, all right, that's all I got today, guys. It's all done. I covered 10 things about working with the type 8. I hope it helped you. I hope if you are an 8, it helped you see yourself even with more clarity and understand yourself better. I think it's so healthy when we do that. And if you work for an 8 or with an 8, I hope this helped you understand them better have more grace, understanding, forgiveness, love, all of those good things of why I teach the Enneagram. I do believe when we learn about each other, we learn to enjoy each other and work better together. And so that's why I'm doing this whole series, because I really, really, really believe that working together is super important and understanding each other. So, but that's all I got today, guys. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm Hillary_McCaskey_coaching. I also have another Instagram that I have kind of like brought from the dead. I started it last year and then never did anything with it, but I've started posting all about Enneagram stuff on it. It's called Enneagram Coaching over on Instagram. And the last way you can find me is on my website, enneagramandcoaching.com. Those are 3 ways that will lead right to me. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, guys. And next week we will have the last video in this series, which is working with a type 9. I'm so sorry if you are a 9 and you were last. Sometimes that happens. So look for that video. And then also I have a couple more videos in my mistyping series coming out. I think mistyping of the 6, 7, and 8 is in the docket. And yeah, lots more coming your way, guys. But thanks so much for watching. I appreciate all of you guys. And until next time, bye, guys.